Oh no, it's only a matter of time before everyone realizes I have no idea what I'm doing. It's bad enough to feel like an imposter when you're trying to break into a new hobby or skill. But gatekeepers and hipsters who mock your street cred make it even worse. Whether it's birdwatching or making video games or even podcasting, it's okay to be interested in things and to try them without knowing absolutely everything. And if you just keep doing your best, maybe you'll fake it till you make it and even get a glimpse of that rare, contest winning bird. Welcome to the Playdate podcast, bringing you stories from game developers, designers, and the team behind Playdate, the little yellow game console with a crank. I'm Krista Mergen. Today I'm talking with Diego Garcia and Max Coburn about Casual Birder, a game where you're the new kid in a town obsessed with birdwatching, and suddenly find yourself on a mission to photograph a rare bird while dealing with a local gang of birdwatching baddies. Slight spoiler alert, we don't get into too much detail about specific puzzles in the game, but we do talk about some of its core mechanics and reference an item you receive in the game. Okay, let's meet the team.
My name is Diego Garcia. I am the designer and developer of Casual Birder. The game is just me and one other person, Max Coburn, who did the music, and then I got a lot of help from Panic as well.
Hey, I am Max Coburn. I made all the music and sound, or at least I believe most of the sound, for Casual Birder.
Casual Birder is sort of like a mashup of a photography game and an old school like Game Boy RPG. So the player is moving to a new town where no one cares about anything except birdwatching, and you're sort of navigating this world of learning a new skill when some people maybe don't want you to learn that skill. And so it's a little bit about imposter syndrome and sort of like what it feels like to break into a new industry or a new skill, yeah.
Yeah, so first, how did Diego hear about Playdate?
Wow, how did I first hear about Playdate? This was like 2015, I think. I had just graduated from NYU and just released my first game, Sunburn, on iOS. And I believe Playdate approached us. I think they had heard about us from some other developers, and they asked the three of us if we wanted to make games, and we decided it didn't really work for the full team, so I just decided to make one on my own.
Well, not entirely on his own. Diego knew he'd want someone else to help with the sound design and music for the game. Someone like
Max Coburn. Max was my favorite musician at the time, and I had emailed them sort of like out of the blue while working on my thesis at the Game Center. So they had made a couple tracks for that, which is a game that never really got released, but I had really enjoyed working with Max and asked them again, and yeah.
I just get an email from Diego. It's like, hey, crazy news. Like, have you heard about the Playdate? And then the rest kind of spilled over from there. I've worked on a couple games with Diego. When I first heard about it, I was super excited because I had no idea what was coming.
Went pretty well. I think the music is among my favorite parts of Casual Birder, so I'm really glad that worked out.
Yeah, the music and sound design are really fantastic and are such a huge part of Casual Birder. But where did the idea come from in the first place?
My brother had a blog called Casual Birder. It was like a Tumblr. I think a few people followed it, but I kind of wanted to make fun of him for like being into birdwatching. And yeah, I guess this like very casual interest in like what I think especially at the time was considered like a very nerdy pastime. And so I started making this game sort of to poke fun at him. And as I started birdwatching for research for this game, I fell in love with it. And now I will spend 4 hours a week in the park, staring up at trees. So I am a very casual birder in my life now. Like I said, I'll go to the park for 4 hours and I will keep a list of all the birds that I'm seeing and I'll try to ID them, but I don't study the book first and I don't know their calls for the most part. And what I really like about birdwatching is I take a 4 hour long walk. That's great. And occasionally I'll meet somebody really nice, or more often I'll just end up in a part of Prospect Park that I didn't know existed, or get lucky and see a bird that I never thought I would see. At that same time, I was graduating grad school, starting making games in general. I attended the MFA program at the NYU Game Center. We had just released our first game, and I felt simultaneously really proud of that game, and also I could only see the faults, and there were so many amazing people making games for the App Store at that time. And so it was kind of spawned out of that. I went through like phases of adult life during the development. And so I think the writing changed a lot. The kid moving to a new town is probably informed by like me graduating and needing to like figure out how to navigate a professional environment. And then like there's a character that's all sad because he's clearly gone through a breakup or something, and that's definitely also inspired by my life. I don't consider myself to be a writer, but I do really enjoy writing funny dialogue, and so I definitely had like a cast of characters that I wanted in the game, and usually I'll just take it sort of like scenario by scenario and write it off the top of my head. But I think, I've been working on this game for a long time, and I'm teaching and working on other games and all this stuff, so I'm sort of like stepping away from it and coming back. So a lot of the dialogue has been revised over and over again, either because it wasn't funny enough or because it like wasn't serving a gameplay purpose.
And of course, Diego not only had all of these characters, scenarios, and a bunch of dialogue to manage, but he also did all of the programming and created all of the art for the game, which was a bit of a challenge given the limitations of Playdate's CPU and 1-bit black and white screen.
It was definitely hard at times, but mostly it was a blast. Like, I came up with a style fairly quickly. Some of the art that's in the game was in my first mockup, and part of me really wanted to do it like once it came out on Playdate, and there was no more exclusivity window. I was like, I'll do a color version and like re-release it here or there. But ultimately, I'm really happy with the art as is, and I don't think I would change it.
A thing that I keep hearing again and again from Playdate game creators is how Playdate's limitations, its tiny screen, limited CPU, and 1-bit black and white graphics, are actually really freeing and end up breeding a lot of creativity in their games. Composer and sound designer Max Coburn definitely welcomes constraints and even finds it helpful to create them for himself.
Even in my own just like private creative endeavors, I'm always like placing some kind of limitation, some kind of theme just to tie myself down. I feel like you get option paralysis a bit when you do so many different things, and probably why I am enticed by the idea of making games on Playdate, because it's like, okay, it's not like I can do literally everything possible. I have a ceiling and I can be creative in this room that I'm in.
What was more challenging was, I guess I was committed to the idea that like every character would have a unique sprite, and all of those unique sprites would be animated, and then also they would have the chat portrait. And so like getting all of that stuff to work and getting like interesting, like everybody has this kind of like at least an up and down bounce when they're standing there, and even getting like that level of movement at that size with just those colors, I think was hard, because to get like any detail or separation, that's when it gets tricky, because I couldn't really even dither very effectively at that size. Like there was no real grayscale for me. It really stuck to black and white.
Well, it really works for the game. Casual Birder has a clean, crisp edge cartoon look that feels right for the characters and game mechanics, one of which is especially interesting. That is, how you use Playdate's crank.
When I first started working, we didn't have the hardware yet. And I think actually I may not have even known about like the ability to test the crank functionality in the simulator that we were working with at that time. So originally I wasn't getting to use the crank, and then I felt like what a foolish waste that would be. Like I just felt sad, to not use such a fun mechanic. And so I went back and I first just did the inventory is controlled by the crank. You sort of selecting your objects by the crank. And then as I was working, I kind of realized that needed a little bit more for the photo mechanic. At first it was just point and click. You're literally just, it's an action game and you have to get the bird in the square and take the picture and that's it. And I thought about like a grading system where it's like Pokemon Snap style, where Professor Oak says like, good job, you got it in the middle and it's doing a cool pose. But it just seemed a little overcomplicated for what I was doing. And I was just looking through the documentation, just like looking at what it could do. And I saw the blur function and I was like, oh, I could totally simulate focus with this, which is, I think, one of the biggest successes and mistakes that I made in developing this game. It's both good and bad.
Oh no. Using Playdate's crank to focus the camera is a genius move, I think. It's such a fun game mechanic, and it gets fairly challenging later in the game. But it did make development more complicated.
I mean, like, I don't consider myself a programmer, really. Like, I'm a game designer and artist, and this is the most game architecture I've ever done. easily when I started making this, that even the SDK was pretty young. So I programmed the animation system, I programmed the cutscene system, like I did all that stuff. I think that I probably didn't rely on Panic enough in those early days. I think maybe that's part of that imposter syndrome. I just felt like I had to like do it all. And so I did a lot of my core functionality. And then I was like, I'm going to add focusing and blurring sprites. And gameplay wise, I think it's right. Like, I think it looks cool. I think it's really unique. I think you're right. I think it makes that mechanic better and more fun. But it was an extreme challenge for me and Dave and Sean to make this game run, I think, at all. Like, I think my frame rate was like below 10 frames per second for a long time. The documentation was super helpful, and the like blur functionality of the game wouldn't exist without it. I don't think I would have tried, actually. I probably would have drawn the blurred version of each bird before I did that. And so that was a lot of that was where Dave and Sean had to come in and sort of help optimize that behavior.
Dave Hayden and Sean Inman were part of the team that worked on Playdate's operating system and software development kit, and were often pretty hands-on in helping out with some of the early third-party Playdate games.
I think what happens is like whenever you blur a sprite, you're basically making a copy of the sprite that you then have to throw out. And so we had to do all kinds of like caching and stuff that mostly Dave knows more about than I do, actually. There was a lot of garbage collection happening. And actually, there's also, I don't know if you noticed, but you can't focus with the crank and move the camera at the same time. Part of that is because it doesn't feel good to do that, right? Like, it's just like the D-pad and the crank at the same time are hard to manipulate. It's like tapping your head and rubbing your stomach or whatever. But part of it is also because that'll dip the frame rate big time, because you're like changing what sprites you need to blur as you move the camera and stuff. So yeah, it added like a lot of technical complication.
Working with Diego and other developers on their games actually led to changes and improvements to the SDK itself. Seeing firsthand what people were missing and having to build for themselves meant that Dave, Sean, and Playdate OS developer Dan Messing could fill in the gaps in the SDK almost on demand.
It was a lot of like, oh, I need this, so I'm going to make this, I'm going to make this, I'm going to make this. And then like I put the game down for a while because I had other stuff going on, and come back and be like, oh, they made that. Dave came in and did like a lot of custom stuff for my game, like just helped me specifically with my game, which I think that did change some stuff in the SDK, like the way blurring is handled and cached or whatever. For the most part, it was a really positive experience.
And while Diego was hard at work writing, designing, and just getting the game to run on Playdate, Max was developing the music and sound design for Casual Birder.
I approached Max and I asked for a couple of songs and a package of sounds. And so I gave like a list of inspirations, games that I wanted to think about. I actually probably have that somewhere.
Diego's somebody who went to my shows a lot at the time. Me and Diego were always like running into each other. And so we'd have a lot of conversations about like game music and all these like crossed influences. So this was a little while ago, so I gotta dig a little in my memory banks. I'm pretty sure we had a conversation to the tune of like, oh, hey, I love Animal Crossing music. So I think when the time came, it's like, oh, I'm working on this like birding game. It was probably very much like, oh, say no more. Like, I know what you're looking for, kind of. And it being a very casual game, I kind of went in the more Animal Crossing, like have a chill time kind of direction. I think getting to make a really catchy title theme and a really catchy just main looping theme, it feels like not as much pressure as making a big, like, long-winded soundtrack. So I had like a little whistly synth that kind of, in a certain range, sounded sort of like a bird call. And I think like with the theme of the game in mind, the way I wrote that was like, all right, you know, I have this really cute, whistly, catchy melody, and I want it to be able to break off into these little bird-like ornaments at certain times in the melody.
The main theme is so fun and catchy, I kind of enjoy just hanging out on the title screen. The chiptune trills in the song echo the bird calls you hear later as you progress through the game. And there are some real bird calls peppered into the background music and sound design as well.
I did include some like real bird samples just in like little places, like in the title screen. I think there's a few. I kind of just like play with those in the track itself. I ran with that, and I love being able to kind of toe that line a bit instrumentally as well. I like to be able to kind of like thread the needle between the two a little bit and kind of have them inform each other. I didn't really know I was going to be doing the chiptune bird calls at that point, but it was cool to have like that bird feeling kind of just in the DNA of the music too. And I love being able to kind of just put a little world building in little places. I mean, and so it's my way of like kind of stealing a little creative control of the process. I'm like, oh yeah, I contribute to the world building too. Even though it was not requested of me, I kind of just like, yeah, let me just sneak a little thing in there.
Yeah, the main theme dovetails really nicely with the bird calls that Max ended up making for all of the different birds in the game. And there turned out to be a lot of them. And they all had to be fairly unique and distinct from one another.
I think one of the things that I struggle with as a designer the most is one thing that many designers struggle with, which is just like scope creep. It was very tempting for me to make every bird have unique behaviors, and I definitely still crept the scope. I mean, I added blurring, and there's all these items and all this like one-off mechanics in the game. But yeah, it was difficult to make them feel interesting and different from each other.
I was pretty much given a list of the different birds. It's like, okay, let me do little like chiptune bird calls for all these little guys.
I basically gave a list, and so that list was like, I need a low bird call, I need a medium bird call, and I need a high pitch bird call. And then I need crow bird call because that's not really going to fit into one of those. And I need an owl and a pelican. So some of them were sort of separated out. And in most cases, I tried to write in text what that sounded like. So like squawk or, you know, whatever sound the bird might make. And in some cases, I gave visual reference as well, just to sort of get a sense of the tone I was going for. Like, one of the weirdest sounds in the game by far is later on in the game, spoiler, you get a bird call, and the bird call does not sound like any bird you've ever heard at all, or any bird in the game, but also like a lot. So the birds respond to it for some reason. And that was just sort of like Max making a very weird sound for a funny bird I had posted. And it was actually too funny. Like, I thought like it didn't, I actually wanted the bird to look really stupid but sound really intense. So we like repurposed it for the bird call, and it's way funnier. It works better.
So how did Diego and Max make so many different birds and keep them individually identifiable?
Mostly what I did was came up with like a set of base behaviors. So like there are birds that sit, there are birds that run from you, there are birds that perch, and then there are birds that have like hideaways. And so I was just kind of playing with those variables along with like their speed. And some of them are kind of gimmicky. Like there's a bird that like just goes too fast for you to take a picture of it until late in the game.
Oh, I'm not going to tell you how long I tried to take a picture of that bird before finally giving up and moving on, because it's kind of an embarrassingly long time. But the birds really do feel distinctive due to their behaviors, their designs, and their individual bird calls.
I did have to do two similar themes for, I believe, the pearly-eyed threshers is what they're still called. And I have a chill version of that and a more action-oriented version. So I think the biggest challenge might have just been differentiating the two, because they are pretty similar. So finding ways to differentiate the two while still keeping that theme like pretty much recognizable and the same was the biggest challenge. I feel like that's something I have a lot more experience doing now.
The chiptune sounds work so well with the 1-bit art. The birds all just feel right. But I know next to nothing about birds, so I found myself wondering if any of them were real or if they were all invented for the game.
They are almost all made up. The ones that are specific at all are made up. And then I think you'll run into a few that have like more realistic names, but it's kind of a joke that they're not made up.
So I found some online encyclopedia of birds and different recordings of their calls, and I pretty much just went into chiptune tracking software and sat down and just like, all right, like what can I do to just emulate this one-to-one as best as I can? Obviously, I'm not going to do a super convincing job because the medium is not going to match up, but I can tell I was having a lot of fun with it. Really, I was getting as much idiosyncrasy from each of those respective bird calls as I could. Honestly, I would love to do something like that again. I think if I'm going to make sound effects for anything, it's a great medium too, because working in chiptune tracking software, you have a ceiling pretty much. Like you can't, it's not like I open up a standard DAW and sky's the limit.
DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. It's a general term for software for music production and sound design, like Logic or Pro Tools. And a chiptune tracker is software that specifically emulates programmable sound generators and synthesizers. It's used for creating 8-bit music, using just a few different waveforms and a noise generator or two. Think of music you might have heard on the Nintendo Game Boy or Commodore 64.
I'm working with like 2 voices tops, and I have a very limited range of texture. So getting to make those creative decisions, I'm like, okay, a duck is a pulse wave, or like little decisions like that, I think really clicked with me. And then hearing it in the game itself was just like, this really worked well. Because again, like doing it a little bit blind initially, like, all right, well, I hope these are good. And then getting that build. Love being able to get the builds of the games I work on. And I love the being able to categorize them and keeping up like the little bird catalog and just keeping your diary. It's just like a feedback loop that I love in games. Just like I'm a huge collector, so I'm going to be pouring in the time into my own game, and that feels really great.
The final output ended up being a really nice collaboration between Max and Diego.
Diego's great to work with. I love his art style. He's super like very one-to-one, like totally has an ear for music, knows how to communicate ideas. Like I'll work with him any chance I get.
Max is really great to work with. It was really collaborative.
There's a lot of just like walk into this area, just absorb the sounds that are happening. Even if it's just little bird calls, you have a little bit of directional mixing, which that was all Diego. Like the programming itself was Diego. I think it really lends a wonderful hand. I mean, you have like the stripped down visual style, obviously, like Playdate, you're not working with any colors. So I feel like there's so much that's reliant on just capturing the environment with it. I think Diego did an incredible job, just like knowing when and where to dip out the music, how to like operate the directional stuff, and just giving you a sense of a vibe. Not that I'm a bird watcher myself, but I did take a one bird watching class one time in college, so use my one semester of expertise to say that. I think that he captures the feeling and soul of it very well, and it's a very peaceful, very almost contemplative kind of gameplay experience. I want people to just like have a good time and relax, and I think a big element of bird watching is kind of just connecting with what's around you and just absorbing what happens, and like getting this sensibility where it's like you're tuning into a layer of sound that exists around you that, you know, if you're somebody like me and you spend all your time in front of the computer and inside and doing work all the time, I think the platform helps with that too, where it's like you have this little portable friend, you have a physical mechanic, and you could really just like cut yourself off a bit, just isolate a little bit in your head and just like have this serene experience.
Mostly I want people to laugh and think it's cute and not be bored. You know, I think it's very much my sense of humor. In some cases, the game like is me. Like a lot of the characters just are me, and so I'm kind of making fun of my own anxieties. Or yeah, I mean, like the whole imposter syndrome thing is like me.
And even if other people are like, oh hey, like it's you're always your own worst critic with that kind of stuff, because you know yourself the best and all that. But yeah, I'm really excited to release that and just have it out there for everybody.
I hope it resonates with people and that they find it fun.
Casual Birder is fun. It's a relaxing game that'll remind you it's okay to try something new without necessarily having all the answers. You might decide it's not even about getting that prize-winning shot of the elusive bird. Being ready to dive in and asking questions and getting help made Diego's game better, and even ended up improving the Playdate SDK itself. I hope you enjoy exploring the forest, meeting funny characters, and tracking down some interesting birds as much as I did.
I really like this project, and I think Panic gave me so much freedom to really just like make a weird game that's full of bad jokes and like, you know, goofy one-off mechanics, and it's very rough around the edges in some ways, but also kind of the most polished thing I've ever made in some ways.
I'm super happy with how it turned out.
I'm really glad that Panic included me, especially as part of this like first season of games. I think it's super exciting to be like featured as part of a group that was trusted with like representing this device, which is so like unique and different. I want to say that it's been really valuable.
I would love to be involved in any other project on Playdate. It's a really cute platform, and I love just like the overall idea of like creative limitation and making more out of less. That's just like a love letter to my heart pretty much. So any opportunity I get to work on something, I'd be happy to take.
Max Coburn recently scored the animated series Battle Kitty, which you can find on Netflix, and you can listen to more of his music on Bandcamp and SoundCloud, where his username is Maxo. You can check out Diego Garcia's other games, including Damaged in Transit and Swap Sword, at radstronomical.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back in your feed with more Playdate stories soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Later.
Bye.
The Playdate podcast was written, produced, and edited by me, Krista Mergen. Cable Sasser and Simon Panrecker composed the theme song. Additional music and sound effects were composed by Max Coburn and come from Casual Birder. Huge thanks to Tim Coulter and Asher Cabrera for wrangling the podcast feed and working on the website, as well as to Nevin Mergen, who created the podcast artwork and site design. And thanks, as always, to everyone at Panic. Playdate is shipping now and available to order at play.date.
So, yeah, I don't know. The game surprised me. Finishing it surprised me. I tried to, like, be as specific as I could without pigeonholing to make a bird pun.